I'm Eric Stewart with Widow Care, and this is Widow Care Talks. Today it's my pleasure to introduce you to Leann Sherman. Leann is the former outreach coordinator for Widow Care, and I'm going to have Leann share her story today about how she discovered Widow Care and was served by Widow Care, and then how she invested her life into Widow Care. And she'll also share about her personal loss. Hi, Leann.
Hi, Eric.
Hey, it's nice to see you again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. So would you mind sharing with us today about how you discovered Widow Care?
I found Widow Care on Facebook, one of my favorite go-to places when I was first widowed. I was there every night because there was a sisterhood, if you will, on Facebook. Found Widow Care, called and spoke to the former director, and I told her what I needed, which was a lot of support, a lot of help with just organizing my life, which at that point was not at all organized. I had moved from Connecticut to here to be closer to family. It was just like a fog. And so the director at the time matched me with a volunteer who came to my apartment, helped me organize my papers, my files, everything. And it just brought so much balance, I guess. And it centered me a little bit. And she also became a friend, and still is.
So from there, you became involved in Widow Care, and you also became a part of some of the social events. And then through those social events, you became friends with other widows who were a part of Widow Care. At what point did your transition take place to decide that you wanted to invest into those who were being served by Widow Care?
Well, it occurred to me that, everybody expects people to become widowed. It's a natural process. But there's not that much support for widows, and you don't think in terms of younger widows. There are widows in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. I myself used to think that widows were all in their 80s. I'm a former social worker, and all the widows I interacted with were elderly. Then I became one, and I realized, well, wait a minute. There are widows of all ages, from illness, from being in the military, and I just knew that it was a need that wasn't being met in the community locally or at large.
It's amazing that 20% of widows are under the age of 45 years of age. I too thought that widows were generally a much older audience, widows and widowers. But the truth is that demographically, widows span all ages and often need more support when they're younger and the children are small. They need more social engagement to help them just make it through raising their children.
Right.
The emotional loss is often exactly the same, although every relationship is different. Now, you ended up working with me at Widow Care, and you were doing a fabulous job for us in organizing me, which is no easy task. And you also assisted in planning events and organizing social and support organizational events, and I was very happy that you worked with Widow Care. You kept us going during a time of reorganization as we went from being a volunteer agency and instead realized that there are many volunteer agencies that already exist and that we can tap into those and then match those volunteers to widows and widowers in need. And that's really proven to be a very big pivot, and you were at that point where I was trying to figure that out. I'm so grateful for how you cared for me and organized the books and planned outreach events. So thank you again for all that hard work.
Oh, thank you.
So in your transition in your life, you were married to Neil for quite some time, and then Neil had a blastoma, as I'm recalling.
It was an angiosarcoma, blood vessel cancer that's very rare and very aggressive.
So tell us a bit about what happened, how you walked through that process, and even through recovering after Neil was gone.
He was having some discomfort, some pains, some shortness of breath. And at the time, and I still feel guilty to this day, I thought, oh, it's because he's not exercising enough. We walked up a small hill and he ran out of breath. And I was annoyed. And what we came to find out was it was because he had an enlarged spleen, which was the first sign or first symptom of the disease. It took many, many months to find the diagnosis. And parenthetically, we had adopted a retired seeing eye dog. And the dog had virtually the same disease. It was just a weird coincidence. It's called hemangiosarcoma in dogs. That they could diagnose in a matter of days, but in humans it's harder. They both lead, in most cases, unfortunately, to death. My husband had multiple surgeries. We saw radiologists, we saw oncologists, and eventually we ended up on hospice for 3 months. And he received throngs of friends. I think the staff at the nursing home thought that he was some celebrity because he kept getting all these visitors coming in, and it was friends and relatives who adored him. And after he died in June of 2011, it was some sort of a fog. I'm going to describe it. You know how you put that funny stuff at Halloween time, it's like threads or white material to look like spider webs? It was like clawing my way through that to get through to the other side, so to speak. And eventually I decided I needed to get away from all that emotion up in Connecticut and move to Maryland, where I have a brother and cousins. And that's what I did. I packed up my Subaru that was his at the time, packed it up like the Clampetts, and moved here. And everything was overwhelming and new. I needed to find a new doctor, a new mechanic, a new hairdresser, new everything. And it just took time, and I made sure to get out there and start to meet people, and I did meet other widows through Widow Care. And it's just a gradual process, and I think newer widows need to remember at all times to not be hard on themselves, because it really is a process. It's not linear, though. You know, it can be up and down. I could see a cantaloupe, 2 years back or 3 years back, and I'd get upset because that was his favorite fruit.
Interesting that a cantaloupe would bring you back in a moment to thinking about him. Based on our research, those triggers are common, that certain things will bring a widow or widower back in a moment, the way that a song might bring us back in time to a certain time in life. Mm-hmm. So how did you process through that trigger of the cantaloupe? What process did you go through?
Well, initially I would just get tearful, and even when I would go for doctor's appointments, I hated going for doctor's appointments because it brought it all back, being in that medical environment. And again, it was just a function of time. And also talking with other widows, talking with friends, talking with people who knew Neil. That was always the most gratifying, talking with someone who really knew him well and liked him. And that was very comforting and soothing to me. And I remember before I moved from Connecticut, a friend of ours was helping me pack up our artwork. And we went outside, to say goodbye to her, and she turned to me and she said, "Neil led an honorable life." And that meant more than almost anything that anybody else could say.
What do you think she meant when she said that Neil had led an honorable life?
That he led an ethical life, honest, giving, loving, caring, everything you can imagine in that department.
Now, widows and widowers are watching this, and I'm curious if there's something besides what you just shared about the engagement that you went through. Is there something that you really want to pass on to other widows and widowers that would either serve them or would help them serve others?
I would say, again, that it's a process and not to be too hard on yourself. I know that sounds really trite, but it's true. It really is a process. And all of a sudden, I remember I was in a department store one day up in Connecticut, and I was buying a pair of jeans. And it hit me, oh my goodness, I'm buying something. I'm doing something normal. I'm in a department store and I'm buying a pair of jeans. Isn't that fabulous? You know, to most people, they wouldn't give it a second thought, but I had been in such a state of mourning, and there I was with some sort of normalcy. So I would say, give yourself time and reach out to close friends who you don't think are going to rush you along. And don't feel obliged to stay around people who are rushing you. And they have their best interest at heart. I had a cousin, actually, may she rest in peace, who after 8 months said to me, "Well, Leann, it's 8 months, don't you think maybe?" It wasn't even a year. And so I would recommend that people gravitate toward others who are good listeners, really good listeners.
One of our missions at Widow Care is to provide a reciprocating relationship between widows and widowers, so that a widow perhaps that's gone through the process you have gone through can help others who are going through a similar process, to give them that peace of mind, give them that encouragement and guidance, and that you'll continue to be a widow for the rest of your life. And you're going to continue to walk through processes and griefs and triggers in different parts of your widowhood. But you can also pass that on, the gift of passing on your knowledge and your understanding to others. And at Widow Care, we really want to assist widows and widowers who are working through, trying to vocalize, maybe having difficulty vocalizing their experiences. Like in most grief scenarios, our understanding is that it's when we can talk about it that we can then let things go, that we can start to work through and actually go through it. But when we're tied up inside and maybe unable or don't feel that somebody's listening, somebody's necessarily not hearing what we're saying, that we become closed, and then it's harder to walk through that grieving.
Well, and one other thing I'd like to add, if I may, and that is that for the, not the caregivers, but for the friends, I would recommend that they go online. There are many articles that tell you how to communicate with someone who's been widowed, and what to say and what not to say. Like not to say, well, he's in a better place, or those trite statements that just are not usually well received.
Leann did a wonderful job of putting together a Widow Care checklist, which is available on widowcare.org. And if you're a widow and you are trying to walk through all the potential thoughts but don't know where to start, the Widow Care checklist is a great resource. There are other resources that are available, and we invite you to continue watching Widow Care Talks. I'm Eric Stewart, and it's been my pleasure to have Leann Sherman join me today. Thank you, Leann.
Thank you, Eric.
Have a wonderful day. If you're a widow or widower and would like to share your story on Widow Care Talks, then give us a call at 301-917-4741. That's 301-917-4741.